I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from. What happened to my family might seem unbelievable, but every word is true. I was folding my grandson's school uniforms when I heard the suitcase hit the bedroom floor upstairs. The sound echoed through our old Victorian house in Springfield like a gunshot. At 67, I'd learned to trust my instincts about trouble. The same radar that helped me spot cheating students and identify kids who needed extra help during my 35 years of teaching was now screaming warnings I didn't want to hear. I set down Orion's pressed white shirt and climbed the creaking stairs, my arthritis protesting with each step. Thaddeus's bedroom door stood wide open. My son was shoving clothes into his black travel bag with the desperate efficiency of someone fleeing a fire. No folding, no organization, just grabbing stuff. His work laptop sat open on the unmade bed, multiple browser windows glowing on the screen. "Going somewhere?" I asked from the doorway, trying to keep my voice steady. He didn't look up. "Business trip, last-minute thing." The lie hung in the air between us like smoke. Thaddeus worked tech support for a local computer repair company. They didn't send him on business trips. They barely sent him to the office downtown. "For how long?" I asked, stepping into the room. "Not sure yet." He grabbed his toiletries from the dresser, knocking over a framed photo of Octavia holding newborn Orion. The glass cracked against the hardwood floor, but Thaddeus stepped over it without pause. My heart clenched. That photo had sat in the same spot since Octavia died giving birth to Orion. Thaddeus used to kiss his fingertips and touch the frame every night before bed. Now he walked past his wife's broken image like it was debris. "Thaddeus, stop!" I moved further into the room. "Talk to me. What's really happening here?" He finally met my eyes, and what I saw there chilled me to the bone. Nothing, no guilt, no sadness, no connection, just cold determination and something that looked almost like relief. "I'm leaving. Mom, I should have done this years ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. All those years of raising his son while he worked through his grief, more than a decade of being the mother Orion needed. While Thaddeus slowly disappeared into his computer screens and late-night activities, I'd chosen not to question. Over a decade of holding our fractured family together with my teacher's pitchin' and grandmother's love. "What about Orion?" My voice cracked despite my efforts to stay strong. "He's better off with you. He always has been." Thaddeus zipped the suitcase with finality. The sound seemed to echo through the house, probably reaching Orion's room where my grandson was supposedly doing homework. "You can't just abandon your son." I gripped the bedpost to steady myself. "I'm not abandoning him. I'm leaving him with the person who actually raised him." Thaddeus lifted the suitcase from the bed. "You've been his real parent since day one. Now it's official." The casual cruelty of his words left me speechless. He walked past me toward the stairs, and I grabbed his arm. "Thaddeus, please, whatever's wrong, we can work through it as a family." He shrugged away from my touch, like I was a stranger. "There is no family, Mom. There's just you and Orion playing house while I pay the bills." His voice hardened. "Well, now you can figure out how to pay them yourself." My blood turned to ice water. What does that mean? But Thaddeus was already heading downstairs, dragging his suitcase behind him. I followed, my slippers catching on the worn carpet runner, heart pounding in my chest. In the living room, Orion sat at the antique desk doing algebra homework. He looked up when we entered, taking in his father's suitcase and my panicked expression with those intelligent, brown eyes that reminded me so much of Octavia. "Going somewhere? Dad." His voice was calm, too calm for a 13-year-old watching his father preparing to leave. Thaddeus paused at the front door. For just a moment, I thought I saw his resolve waver as he looked at his son. Orion had grown tall and lean like his father had been at that age, but with Octavia's thoughtful nature and quiet intensity, "I need some time away, buddy. Grandma will take care of you." Orion's pencil stopped moving. "For how long?" "I don't know yet." Orion nodded once, like he was filing away information for later analysis. "Okay." The simple acceptance in my grandson's voice broke my heart. No tears, no protests, no desperate pleas for his father to stay, just quiet resignation, as if he'd been expecting this moment. Thaddeus opened the front door, and October air rushed into our warm house. "I'll call when I'm settled." "Where are you going?" I asked. One last desperate attempt to hold on to some connection. "Somewhere I can breathe again." The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow sounded louder than if he'd slammed it. Through the window, I watched him load his suitcase into his silver Honda and drive away from the house where his son had lived his entire life. Orion and I stood in the sudden silence of our living room. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked steadily. The furnace hummed to life. Outside, a car engine faded into the distance. "Is he coming back?" Orion asked, his eyes still fixed on his algebra book. I wanted to lie to protect him from the truth I had seen in his father's eyes, but Orion was too smart for comfortable lies. "I don't think so, sweetheart." He closed his algebra book with careful precision and stacked it neatly with his other textbooks. Then he looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before on his young face. "Grandma, don't worry, I'll handle this." The words were so unexpected, delivered with such quiet confidence that I almost laughed. Handle what? He was 13 years old. What could he possibly handle about his father abandoning us? But something in his tone made me pause. There was no childish bravado, no empty comfort, just calm certainty, like he knew something I didn't. "What do you mean, Orion?" He picked up his books and headed toward the stairs. "I need to check our bank accounts first. Then we'll know exactly what we're dealing with." Bank accounts. My 13-year-old grandson was talking about checking bank accounts. "Orion, wait." But he was already climbing the stairs to his room, leaving me alone in a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty with questions I couldn't answer and a future I couldn't see. That first night without Thaddeus, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed listening to the house settle around me, every creak and groan magnified in the darkness. The weight of single parenthood pressed down on me again, but this time without the cushion of youth or the hope that things would eventually get better. Around midnight, I heard it, the soft clicking of computer keys coming from Orion's room. I padded down the hallway in my bathrobe and slippers, pausing outside his door. Light seeped from beneath the frame, and the typing continued with a steady, purposeful rhythm, far too focused for a boy who should be sleeping. I knocked gently. "Orion, it's past midnight. Sweetheart." "Come in, Grandma." I pushed open the door to find Orion sitting at his desk, still fully dressed, surrounded by notebooks and printed papers. His laptop screen glowed with what looked like multiple windows and data streams I couldn't begin to understand. "What are you doing up so late?" "Research." He gestured to the papers scattered across his desk. "I've been going through Dad's digital footprints for the past 3 hours. Digital footprints." I moved closer, trying to make sense of the documents, bank statements, credit reports, what looked like email printouts, all bearing our family name. "Orion, where did you get these?" "Dad isn't very careful with his passwords." He clicked something on his laptop, and a new window opened, showing what appeared to be Thaddeus's email account. "He uses the same one for everything. Octavia 2010, the year they got married." My stomach dropped. "You hacked into your father's email." "Technically, I just logged in with his password. It's not hacking if he left the door unlocked." Orion's matter-of-fact tone made my head spin. "Grandma, you need to sit down. What I found is worse than we thought." I sank into the chair beside his desk, my legs suddenly unsteady. "How much worse?" Orion handed me a printed bank statement with my name at the top. I stared at the numbers, blinking hard to make sure I was reading correctly. "This can't be right. My savings account shows $12. "It's right." His young voice carried a weight no child should bear. "Dad didn't just take some money when he left. He's been draining our accounts for months." The paper trembled in my hands. $12. My life savings accumulated over decades of teaching, reduced to pocket change. "What about your college fund?" Orion handed me another statement. The account that should have contained $43,000 showed zero. "No." The word came out as a whisper. No, that money was protected. It was in a special education savings account. Not anymore. Orion pulled up another document on his screen. 3 weeks ago, Dad transferred it all to his personal checking account. Then he moved it somewhere else. I felt like I was drowning in numbers and betrayal. Somewhere else. That's what took me so long to figure out. Orion's fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced ease. Dad's been working with someone. Her name is Persephone Velez. She works at Meridian Financial Services downtown. He pulled up a social media profile showing a young woman with dark hair and a bright smile, professional photos, vacation pictures, inspirational quotes about living your best life. She's his girlfriend. More than that, she's been helping him move money around, create new accounts, even apply for loans using our information. Orion's jaw tightened with an anger that looked startling on his young face. Grandma, they've been planning this for months. The room spun around me. I gripped the edge of Orion's desk, trying to process what he was telling me. What kind of loans? Orion clicked to another document. A $30,000 personal loan using your name and social security number. A $15,000 credit card application using my social security number with a fake age listed as 25. They forged all the signatures. On identity theft, my own son had stolen my identity and his child's identity to fund his escape with another woman. How do you know all this? I've been watching Dad's behavior for weeks. The secret phone calls, the way he acted when certain emails came in, how he'd quickly close his laptop when I walked into the room. Orion minimized one window and opened another. I started paying attention because something felt wrong. Then I learned how to see what he was hiding. Learned how YouTube tutorials mostly, online forums about computer security. It's not that hard once you understand the basics. I stared at my grandson, this child I'd raised from birth, and realized I'd been living with a stranger. While I'd been helping him with homework and packing his lunches, he'd been teaching himself cybersecurity skills. Orion, this is illegal. What they've done to us, I know. His voice was calm, steady. That's why I documented everything. Every transfer, every forged document, every fraudulent application. I have proof of all of it. He opened a folder on his desktop labeled Evidence, and my breath caught. Dozens of files, screenshots, bank records, email conversations between Thaddeus and Persephone discussing their plans. They were going to disappear together. Persephone had been looking at apartments in different cities. They were planning to change their names and start over with our money. I caught the past tense in his voice. Orion's expression shifted to something I'd never seen before. Not anger exactly, but cold satisfaction. Their plans hit a few snags today. Before I could ask what he meant, his laptop chimed with an email notification. Orion glanced at the screen and smiled, a smile that sent chills down my spine. That would be Dad's bank calling about the fraud alert I filed this afternoon. You filed a fraud alert. I filed several things today. Fraud alerts, identity theft reports, complaints to the State Banking Commission. Orion leaned back in his chair. I also sent some very interesting information to Persephone's employer about her unauthorized access to client accounts. My mouth fell open. Orion, what have you done? I protected us. His voice was matter of fact, like he was discussing a school project. Dad thought he could steal from us and walk away clean. He thought we were too trusting and helpless to fight back. The laptop chimed again. Orion glanced at the new email and his smile widened. And that would be confirmation that Persephone Velez has been suspended from Meridian Financial pending investigation into client account irregularities. I felt dizzy. While I'd been crying myself to sleep and wondering how we'd pay next month's bills, my grandson had been waging digital warfare against the people who'd betrayed us. How did you learn to do all this? The same internet that taught Dad how to commit financial fraud taught me how to stop it. Orion closed his laptop and looked at me directly. Grandma, they didn't just steal our money. They tried to steal our future. Someone had to make sure there were consequences. I looked around Orion's room with new eyes at the organized desk, the neat stacks of evidence, the calm determination of a child who'd been forced to become his own protector. What happens now? Orion stood up and began organizing his papers into careful piles. Now we wait. Dad's accounts are frozen. Persephone's career is over. And their apartment hunting has stalled since their loan applications keep getting flagged for fraud. He paused, looking younger for a moment, despite everything he'd accomplished. And tomorrow, we start figuring out how to get our money back. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and scrambled eggs. I found Orion in the kitchen, fully dressed for school, 2 plates set on our small breakfast table. You cooked breakfast. You need to eat something. And I figured we both needed our strength today. He poured orange juice into my glass with the careful attention of someone much older. I've been thinking about our next steps. I sat down, marveling at how normal this felt. Despite everything that had happened, Orion eating cereal while discussing financial fraud like other kids might talk about their weekend plans. What kind of next step? Orion pulled out a manila folder and opened it beside his breakfast. I spent the rest of last night digging deeper into Persephone's background. What I found is going to help us, but it's also pretty disturbing. He handed me a printed document that looked like a police report. Persephone Velez has been running financial scams for years. This is from when she worked at Premier Investment Services in Toledo before moving here. I scanned the report, my coffee growing cold as I read, embezzlement, unauthorized access to client accounts, falsified investment statements. She was arrested, charged, but the case was dropped when she agreed to pay restitution and resign. Orion turned to another page. Then she moved here to Springfield and got hired at Meridian Financial. They never checked her background properly. How did you find this? Court records are public information. You just have to know where to look. Orion's tone was matter of fact, but I could see the intensity in his eyes. But here's the really interesting part. Persephone has been stealing from her current clients, too. He pulled out more documents, bank statements, investment portfolios, transfer records. Orion, where did you get these? Persephone uses the same password strategy as Dad. Once I figured out her pattern, I could access her work accounts. He paused, seemingly reading my expression. I know it sounds bad, but Grandma, she's been stealing from elderly people. People your age who trusted her with their retirement savings. My hands shook as I looked through the evidence. Mrs. Frances Miller, 82 years old, missing $30,000 from her pension account. Mr. Richard Hayes, 74 life savings reduced by half. Page after page of victims. This is horrible. It gets worse. Dad knew about all of this. Orion clicked something on his laptop, which he'd brought to the breakfast table. He's been helping her cover her tracks in exchange for help with our money. The screen showed email conversations between Thaddeus and Persephone, my son discussing how to hide stolen funds, how to create false digital trails, how to make elderly victims think their missing money was due to market losses. Your father helped her steal from other families. He set up fake investment accounts to make the thefts look legitimate. He created false documents to show fake losses. Also, Orion's young voice carried a disgust that broke my heart. Dad didn't just betray us. Grandma, he's been betraying innocent people for months. I pushed my breakfast away, my appetite completely gone. My son hadn't just stolen from his own family. He'd become a predator targeting vulnerable elderly people. How many victims? I've identified 17 so far. Total losses of over $400,000. Orion closed the laptop and looked at me seriously. But I think I can help them get their money back. How? The same way I'm going to help us get ours back. I documented everything, every transaction, every forged document, every fake account. I have proof of where all the money went and how they moved it around. Orion stood up and walked to our kitchen window, looking out at the morning sunshine like a general surveying a battlefield. Yesterday, I focused on stopping them from doing more damage. Today, I start the recovery process. Recovery process. I'm going to contact each victim and provide them with evidence of what happened to their money. Then I'm going to help them file complaints with the proper authorities. He turned back to me. And I'm going to make sure Dad and Persephone face consequences for every single person they hurt. The determination in his voice was both inspiring and terrifying. My grandson was taking on the responsibility of seeking justice for multiple families, and he was doing it with the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Orion, this is so much responsibility for someone your age. Age doesn't matter when you have the skills and the evidence. He sat back down and reopened his laptop. Besides, someone has to do it. These people trusted Persephone with their life savings. They trusted Dad to protect their investments. They deserve to know the truth. He pulled up what looked like a spreadsheet with names, amounts, and dates. Mrs. Miller doesn't even know her money is missing yet. Persephone has been sending her fake statements showing gains while actually draining her account. Mr. Hayes thinks he lost money in a bad investment, but really Persephone just transferred it to her personal account. How will you contact them? Very carefully. I can't just call them and say their financial advisor is a criminal. I need to approach this properly with evidence they can understand and verify independently. Orion clicked to another document. I'm going to send anonymous packages to each victim, complete documentation of what happened to their money, instructions for how to report the crimes, and contact information for legal aid services that can help them. Anonymous packages. I can't reveal who I am without compromising the investigation, but I can make sure each person gets the information they need to protect themselves and recover their losses. I watched my grandson organize evidence against financial predators with the same methodical care he used to organize his school supplies. What about us? Money. That's more complicated because Dad had legal access to our accounts initially. But the fraudulent loans using our identities, that's clearly criminal. Orion pulled up another folder on his screen. I've already filed the paperwork to dispute those loans. The investigation should take a few weeks, but we should be able to get that debt removed from our names. And our actual savings, I asked, thinking of my empty account and Orion's stolen college fund. Orion's expression grew more serious. That's going to take longer, but I think I can trace where the money went and prove it was transferred for illegal purposes. If Persephone goes to prison for the other thefts, we might be able to recover some of our losses through restitution. If she goes to prison, she's definitely going to prison. I have enough evidence to convict her 10 times over. The question is whether Dad will cooperate with authorities or go down with her. Orion closed his laptop and looked at me with those serious brown eyes. Grandma, I need you to understand something. This is going to get harder before it gets easier. When the police start investigating, when lawyers get involved, when this becomes public, people are going to ask questions about how a 13-year-old obtained all this evidence. What will you tell them? The truth, that Dad and Persephone were careless with their digital security, and I was smart enough to document their crimes before they could cover their tracks. He paused. But I need you to be prepared for people to be impressed and scared by what I can do. Are you scared? I asked, studying his young face. Orion considered this question with a thoughtfulness that reminded me so much of Octavia. No, I'm angry. And anger is more useful than fear when you're fighting for your family. He stood up and gathered his school backpack. I should get to class. I have a chemistry test today, and I still need to maintain my grades while I'm taking down financial criminals. The casual way he transitioned from discussing federal crimes to worrying about his chemistry test would have been funny if it weren't so surreal. Orion. He paused at the kitchen door. I'm proud of you, and I'm sorry you had to grow up so fast. A small, sad smile crossed his face. I didn't grow up fast, Grandma. I just discovered I was already grown up. He hesitated, then came back to give me a quick hug. Don't worry, we're going to be okay. And so are all the people Dad and Persephone hurt. After he left for school, I sat in my quiet kitchen, surrounded by evidence of crimes I never could have imagined. My grandson was fighting a war I didn't fully understand. using weapons I couldn't even identify. But for the first time since Thaddeus walked out our door, I felt something besides fear and betrayal. I felt hope. The morning after Orion left for school, I tried to distract myself by cleaning the house. Each room felt different now, as if Thaddeus's betrayal had changed the very walls around us. In his bedroom, I found more evidence of his careful planning: empty drawers, missing personal documents, the lingering scent of his cologne already fading. I sat on the edge of his bed, holding the cracked photo frame of Octavia and baby Orion. My beautiful daughter-in-law had trusted me to help raise her son. "I'm trying, Octavia," I whispered to her frozen smile. "But I never expected this." My phone rang, startling me. Unknown number. My heart leaped Thaddeus, but I hesitated before answering. "Mrs. Blackwood, this is Sandra from Springfield Credit Union. We've been trying to reach you about some unusual activity on your accounts." My throat tightened. "Yes, I'm aware. My grandson filed fraud reports yesterday." "Your grandson?" Confusion colored her voice. "We have a note that Eleanor Blackwood called personally." I closed my eyes. Of course. Orion had impersonated me. "Yes, that's correct. I'm sorry. It's been a difficult time. What do you need from me?" 20 minutes and multiple security questions later, I had confirmed what Orion discovered. Every account was nearly empty. The credit union representative's voice grew increasingly concerned as she walked me through the fraudulent loan applications submitted in my name. "Mrs. Blackwood, this appears to be identity theft. We'll need you to come in and sign formal disputes for these applications." By the time I hung up, my hand was trembling. The scale of what Thaddeus had done, what my son had become, was overwhelming. I spent the rest of the morning making calls to the electric company about our overdue bill, to the mortgage company about our payment, to my old school about possible substitute teaching positions. Each conversation hammered home our precarious financial situation. At 3:30, I heard Orion's key in the lock. He walked in looking like any other middle schooler, backpack slung over one shoulder, uniform slightly rumpled, but his eyes carried a focus no child should have. "How was school?" I asked, trying to maintain some normalcy. "Fine, I got an A on my chemistry test." He set his backpack down and immediately pulled out his laptop. "But that's not important. We've had developments." He opened his computer on the kitchen table, typing rapidly. "The fraud alerts are working. Dad tried to withdraw cash from 3 different ATMs this morning, but his cards were declined." "How do you know that?" "I set up alerts for any activity on his accounts." Well, Orion's fingers flew across the keyboard. "And I just got an email from the Financial Crimes Division at Springfield PD. They want to meet with us tomorrow about our case." "The police contacted you directly?" I asked, alarmed. Orion looked slightly uncomfortable for the first time. "Not exactly. I sent them an anonymous tip yesterday with some of our evidence. Then this morning, I called them as you." "Orion, you can't impersonate me to law enforcement." "I didn't say I was you. I just called on your behalf." He looked up, seeing my expression. "Grandma, I know it seems strange, but adult institutions don't take 13-year-olds seriously. I need to work around that to protect us." I sat down heavily across from him. "You're right, but we need to be careful. The credit union called me today. They knew about the fraud reports I filed." Orion nodded, thinking. "That's actually good. It means they're taking it seriously." "Did they ask you to come in?" "Yes, tomorrow morning." "Perfect. You should go in person and make everything official. I've prepared all the paperwork you'll need." He pulled a folder from his backpack and slid it across the table. "Just sign these dispute forms where I've marked." I opened the folder to find meticulously prepared documents, each with yellow sticky notes indicating signature lines. "Orion, this is..." I trailed off, unsure how to express my mixture of gratitude and concern. "I know it's a lot, Grandma, but today was just the beginning." He turned his laptop to show me what looked like a tracking spreadsheet. "I sent out information packages to 3 of Persephone's victims this morning. I had to use the school printer during lunch, so I could only do 3. Tomorrow I'll send more." The methodical way he approached this crusade for justice was both impressive and disturbing. My grandson was handling this crisis with more composure than most adults I knew. There's something else. Orion's expression grew more serious. I tried accessing more of Persephone's client records today, but I'm locked out. They must have changed security protocols after suspending her. For a moment, he looked his age, a frustrated boy facing an obstacle. That's probably for the best. Orion, we don't want you getting into legal trouble. But I need those records to help the other victims. His voice rose slightly, the first crack in his calm demeanor. There are elderly people being robbed right now who don't even know it. I reached across the table and took his hand. I understand, but there must be a safer way to help them. Orion stared at his computer, brow furrowed in concentration. Maybe there is. My computer science teacher, Mr. Whitaker, he used to work in cybersecurity. He might have ideas about how to document this legally. You want to tell your teacher about this? Not everything, just enough to get his advice. Orion was already typing out an email. I can frame it as a hypothetical situation, get his input without revealing what I've already done. I watched him compose the message, carefully wording each sentence. He was navigating a complex ethical landscape no child should have to face. Orion, I need to ask you something. I waited until he looked up. How long have you been watching your father's activities, Rowan? A shadow crossed his face. 6 months, maybe longer. 6 months, why didn't you say anything? At first, I wasn't sure what I was seeing. Dad was just acting strange, password protecting everything, taking calls in the backyard, staying up late. Orion closed his laptop slightly. Then I saw him looking at apartments in other cities. I thought maybe he was planning to take me away from you. My heart ached at the pain in his voice. I started monitoring his emails to see what was happening. That's when I found messages from Persephone. His expression hardened. Once I understood what they were planning, I had to gather evidence before confronting him. I couldn't risk him covering his tracks. So all those nights you were up late doing homework, I was documenting everything. Orion opened a drawer in the kitchen and pulled out a small notebook. I kept a physical record too, just in case. Dates, times, actions, everything. I took the notebook, flipping through pages of meticulous notes in Orion's careful handwriting. Each entry detailed suspicious activities, conversations overheard, amounts transferred from accounts. The earliest entry was from 8 months ago. Oh, Orion? I felt tears welling up. You've been carrying this alone all this time. Not alone, I had you. He took the notebook back, returning it to its hiding place. I just couldn't tell you until I had proof. I didn't want you to have to choose between believing me or believing Dad. The weight of his words crushed me. My grandson had been silently fighting to protect our family while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. He'd shouldered an adult's burden while I remained oblivious. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. Dad was careful around you. He knew you'd catch on if he slipped up. Orion gave me a small smile. Besides, you were busy taking care of me. That was your job. Protecting us was mine. I wanted to tell him that wasn't true. That protection was my responsibility, not his. But the evidence of his careful vigilance was spread across our kitchen table. What now? I asked instead. Now we eat dinner. I'm starving. Orion stood and moved to the refrigerator. And then I need to prepare you for your meeting at the credit union tomorrow. We have to get our story straight. As he pulled out ingredients for a simple dinner, I noticed a photo tucked under a magnet on the refrigerator door. Thaddeus, Orion, and me at the lake last summer. We were smiling. Orion caught mid-laugh as his father pretended to push him off the dock. Orion saw me looking and paused. I keep it there to remind myself. Remind yourself of what? That even people who seem to love you can betray you. He turned away, reaching for a pan. And that sometimes the person you thought would protect you is the one you need protection from. The next morning, I dressed carefully for my appointment at the credit union, my best navy dress. Sensible pumps, pearl earrings Thaddeus had given me for my 60th birthday. I needed to look composed, dignified, like a victim who deserved to be taken seriously. Orion sat at the kitchen table, reviewing the talking points he'd prepared for me. Remember, let them guide the conversation at first, he instructed, sounding eerily like a lawyer briefing a client. Answer their questions directly, but don't volunteer information about how we discovered the fraud. If they ask, just say you noticed unusual account activity and investigated. I feel like I'm about to testify in court, I said, tucking the folder of documents into my purse. In a way, you are. This is the first official record of Dad's crimes. Orion looked up from his notes, suddenly seeming younger. Are you sure you don't want me to come with you? You have school, and this is something I need to do. I straightened my shoulders. Besides, a grandmother arriving with her 13-year-old financial advisor might raise questions we don't want to answer yet. He nodded reluctantly. Text me when you're done. And remember, Bafano, don't sign anything they didn't prepare specifically for this fraud claim. At the credit union, a sympathetic manager named Kevin escorted me to a private office. As we reviewed each unauthorized transaction, the reality of Thaddeus's betrayal struck me anew. He hadn't just taken our money in one desperate grab, he'd been systematically draining accounts for months, taking small amounts that wouldn't immediately trigger suspicion. Mrs. Blackwood, I have to ask, Kevin said gently. Did you have any indication your son was planning this? I thought of Orion's secret notebook, the months of vigilance. None. I trusted him completely. And the loans he applied for in your name, did you authorize those? Absolutely not. I would never take out a loan at my age, especially not for those amounts. Kevin nodded, making notes. We'll need copies of the police report once you've filed it. For now, I'm placing a security freeze on your credit to prevent any additional applications. By the time I left, I'd signed a stack of forms disputing the fraudulent activity and formally separating my finances from Thaddeus's. I felt both lighter and heavier progress had been made, but the path ahead still seemed daunting. When I returned home, I found Orion in the living room with a tall, lanky man with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Grandma, this is Mr. Whitaker, my computer science teacher, Orion said, standing quickly. He came over to help us with our, situation. Phoenix Whitaker rose to shake my hand. Mrs. Blackwood, I hope you don't mind my visit. Orion explained some of what you're going through, and I thought I might be able to assist. I shot Orion a questioning look. He gave a small nod, indicating it was safe to talk. Thank you for coming, Whitaker. I'm afraid our situation is rather complicated. Phoenix, please. He gestured to Orion's laptop on the coffee table. Your grandson has shown me some concerning documentation. With your permission, I'd like to help you properly secure this evidence so it will be admissible if legal proceedings become necessary. Over the next hour, Phoenix explained the legal boundaries of digital evidence collection. Some of Orion's methods, while clever, walked a fine line of legality. Together, they worked to create secure backups of the evidence and document the chain of custody. The key issue, Phoenix explained, is demonstrating you didn't illegally access accounts you weren't authorized to view. Orion says you had legitimate access to your own accounts and those held jointly with your son. Yes, I was a co-signer on most of them, I confirmed. Good, that gives you legal standing to dispute the transfers. Phoenix turned to Orion. The client information from Ms. Valez's work accounts is more problematic. You accessed those without authorization. Orion's shoulders slumped. But that's the evidence that shows the larger fraud scheme. Without it, it just looks like a family financial dispute. Phoenix considered this. There's a concept in law called fruit of the poisonous tree. Evidence obtained illegally usually can't be used in court. However, he held up a finger when Orion started to protest. There are whistleblower protections that might apply here. The key is getting this information to authorities through proper channels. What do you suggest? I asked. I have a contact at the State Financial Regulatory Commission. I can arrange a meeting where you can turn over what you found without detailing exactly how you obtained it. Phoenix looked seriously at Orion. But from this point forward, no more unauthorized access. We need to work within the system. Orion nodded reluctantly. What about the victims? They still don't know they're being robbed. There are proper whistleblower channels for that too. I'll help you navigate them. Phoenix gathered his notes. Orion, you've done remarkable work uncovering this scheme. Now let's make sure justice is served without putting you at risk. After Phoenix left, Orion paced the living room, frustrated energy radiating from him. I don't like it. Going through official channels will take too long. Every day we wait, more money could disappear. Phoenix is trying to protect you. Orion, I sat on the couch, exhausted from my morning at the credit union. What you've done exists in a gray area legally. We need to be careful. But, no buts. You've already done more than anyone could expect. Now we need to let the proper authorities take over. Orion stopped pacing, his expression troubled. What if they don't do anything? What if Dad and Persephone get away with it? They won't. You've made sure of that. He sank into the armchair, suddenly looking very small. I hate him sometimes. For what he did to us. For helping her steal from innocent people. His voice dropped to a whisper. But sometimes I still miss him. Is that stupid? My heart ached. Beneath the remarkable composure and intelligence, Orion was still a boy who had lost his father. Not stupid at all, sweetheart. He's your dad. It's complicated. I found something last night. Orion pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was in Dad's cloud storage, from when I was little. The picture showed Thaddeus holding toddler Orion on his shoulders at a carnival, both beaming with identical smiles, before grief and whatever else had twisted him had taken hold. He wasn't always like this, Orion said quietly. Something changed him. I moved to sit beside him, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. People are complicated. Orion, sometimes they make terrible choices even when they love their families. Do you think he ever loved me? The raw vulnerability in his question broke my heart. I know he did. Maybe part of him still does. I squeezed his shoulders. But love isn't just a feeling. It's actions. It's choices. And your father made choices that hurt you, no matter how he felt. Orion leaned against me, allowing himself this moment of being simply a child seeking comfort. I'm going to make sure he faces consequences. But I don't hate him. Grandma, I just want him to be the dad in that picture again. I know, sweetheart. I know. For a few minutes, we sat in silence, the weight of betrayal and loss hanging heavy around us. Then Orion's phone pinged with an alert. He straightened immediately. The vulnerable boy replaced once more by the determined investigator. It's from my tracking program, he said, checking the notification. Dad just tried to access his email account from a new location. Can you tell where the Sunset Motel on Route 9? Orion was already typing. It's the first concrete location we have for him. Should we tell the police? I considered this. Not yet. Let's wait and see what Phoenix arranges with the Financial Commission. We don't want to tip our hand too early. Orion nodded, adding the information to his tracking spreadsheet. Okay, but now we know where they're hiding. The determined set of his jaw reminded me so much of Octavia, the same quiet strength, the same unwavering resolve. In that moment, I could almost see the man he would become, shaped by this crisis but not defined by it. One step at a time, I reminded him. We're making progress. 3 days later, the first signs appeared that our actions were having an effect. I received a call from our mortgage company confirming that the suspicious attempt to refinance our home had been flagged and denied. The credit monitoring service Phoenix had helped us set up reported that a credit card application in my name had been rejected due to the security freeze. Orion tracked these developments with clinical precision, updating his spreadsheets and timelines. He'd become more cautious in his methods after Phoenix's warnings, but no less determined. Dad and Persephone are getting desperate, he reported one evening, reviewing his alerts. They've tried 3 different banks today. All declined their applications. Their digital footprint is shrinking as more institutions block them. I was sorting through bills at the kitchen table, trying to determine which ones were most urgent. Without Thaddeus's income, our financial situation was precarious. My teacher's pension barely covered the mortgage. Mrs. Abernathy called about the electricity bill. I mentioned. She said Thaddeus usually handles the neighborhood association dues too. Orion looked up from his laptop. I forgot about those. Add them to the list, and I'll see what we can shift around. At 13, my grandson was helping budget our limited funds with the expertise of a financial planner. He'd already suggested I return to substitute teaching and had researched potential tutoring opportunities to generate extra income. We'll manage, he assured me, seeing my worried expression. Once the fraud investigation is complete, we should get relief from the loan debt. And I've applied for emergency assistance through 3 different programs. You've applied how? A faint blush colored his cheeks. Online forms. They don't verify age if you have all the right information. I sighed. Orion. I know. Gray area. He shrugged. But we qualify for the assistance. Grandma. And we need it. Before I could respond, Orion's phone chimed with an alert. He checked it, his eyebrows rising in surprise. That's interesting. Someone just accessed Persephone's work computer remotely. Your father. No, this is from Inside Meridian Financial. Looks like they're conducting their own investigation. Orion smiled slightly. Good. The more eyes on her activities, the better. My phone rang a number I didn't recognize. I answered cautiously. Mrs. Blackwood. This is Detective Lowell Rhodes from the Springfield Police Department, Financial Crimes Division. We received some concerning information about your son, Thaddeus Blackwood, and a Persephone Velez. I caught Orion's eye and mouthed police to him. He immediately moved closer to listen. Yes, Detective, we've been dealing with some difficult discoveries. I understand we have documentation indicating potential identity theft and financial fraud. I'd like to meet with you to discuss this case. Would tomorrow morning be possible? Of course, I agreed to a 10 a.m. appointment at the station. Should I bring anything specific? Any documentation you have regarding unauthorized transactions or applications would be helpful. We already have quite a substantial file, but your perspective is important. After hanging up, I turned to Orion. The police want to meet tomorrow about the case. They say they already have a substantial file. Phoenix must have contacted them. Orion chewed his lip thoughtfully. This is good, but we need to be careful about what we reveal regarding my methods. I won't mention anything that could get you in trouble. It's not just that. He closed his laptop, looking troubled. Once the police are fully involved, this becomes official. Dad could go to prison. I studied my grandson's face, seeing the conflict there. For all his determination to see justice done, the reality of his father facing criminal charges was hitting home. Are you having second thoughts? No? His answer was immediate. What he did was wrong. What they did to those other people was worse. He looked down at his hands. But it's different now that it's really happening. I reached across the table to take his hand. It's okay to have complicated feelings about this. Orion, he's still your father. I keep thinking about Mom. His voice was quiet. What would she think of all this? Octavia was the most principled person I've ever known. I smiled sadly, remembering my daughter-in-law's fierce sense of justice. She would be heartbroken about Thaddeus's choices, but incredibly proud of you for standing up for what's right. Orion nodded slowly. I hope so. Later that evening, as I was preparing for bed, I heard Orion's voice from his room. He was speaking softly, but with the intense focus I'd come to recognize when he was working on his investigation. I paused outside his door, not wanting to intrude but concerned about his late-night activities. I understand your concern. Mrs. Miller, I heard him say in a deliberately deepened voice, but the documentation I sent you clearly shows unauthorized withdrawals from your account. My heart raced. He was directly contacting the victims now. No, I cannot reveal my identity at this time, he continued. I am acting as a whistleblower. What matters is protecting your retirement savings. Yes, I suggest taking those documents to the police immediately. No, Meridian Financial cannot be trusted to investigate themselves. I should have interrupted, should have stopped him from impersonating an adult and potentially crossing more legal boundaries. But something held me back. Perhaps it was the genuine concern in his voice, or the knowledge that he was trying to help vulnerable people who had been victimized. I quietly returned to my room, troubled but also moved by his determination. My grandson was fighting a battle that adults should have been fighting. He was protecting people who should have been protected by the systems designed to keep them safe. Tomorrow, we would meet with the police. We would begin the official process of seeking justice. But tonight, Orion was ensuring that no one was left behind, that every victim had a chance to recover what was stolen from them. I lay awake long after his voice fell silent, wondering what the coming days would bring. The sound of soft keystrokes continued from his room until well past midnight. 3 days after our meeting with Detective Rhodes, I was sorting laundry when my phone rang. Thaddeus's name flashed on the screen. My hands froze. A pair of Orion's socks suspended midair. I hadn't heard from my son since he walked out our door. Part of me wanted to ignore the call, to deny him the connection he had so casually discarded. But another part, the mother who had raised him, who had watched him grieve his wife and struggled to be a father, couldn't turn away. I answered on the fourth ring. Hello, Mom. Thaddeus's voice was strained, desperate in a way I'd never heard before. We need to talk. Now. I sat down on Orion's bed, surrounded by his clean laundry. You want to talk? After disappearing without a word for nearly 2 weeks. Something's wrong. Everything's falling apart, and I think someone's targeting me and Persephone. I glanced toward the hallway, where the soft clicking of computer keys drifted from Orion's study area downstairs. What kind of targeting? My bank accounts are frozen. The police showed up at my motel asking questions about identity theft. Persephone got fired from her job, and now she's being investigated by the State Banking Commission. The words tumbled out in a rush. Mom, someone knows everything. They have records of things that should be private. Maybe your private things weren't as private as you thought. I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. This isn't a joke. His voice rose sharply. Whoever's doing this, they have access to emails, bank records, even phone calls between me and Persephone. They sent her boss a complete file documenting every transaction she's ever made. I felt a chill of pride mixed with concern. Orion had been more thorough than I'd imagined. Thaddeus, maybe this is just consequences catching up with you. Oh no, this is coordinated. This is someone with serious computer skills who wants to destroy us. His voice cracked. Mom, I think they might come after you and Orion next. You need to be careful. The irony was almost laughable. Thaddeus warning me to protect myself and Orion from the very person who was actually protecting us. Where are you staying? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. A motel outside town. Persephone and I had to use cash because our credit cards aren't working. He paused. Mom, I know I screwed up. I know I hurt you and Orion, but I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? Heat rose in my voice. Were you planning to leave anything in our accounts? I was just going to borrow the money temporarily. Persephone had this investment opportunity that was guaranteed to triple our money within 6 months. We were going to pay everything back with interest. The same tired lie criminals always told themselves. It was just borrowing. It was going to work out. Nobody was going to get hurt. Thaddeus, you stole Orion's college fund. You used our identities to get loans. That's not borrowing, that's fraud. I know. He sounded close to tears. But Mom, listen to me. Whoever's doing this to us, they're not just exposing what we did. They're actively sabotaging us. Our car got repossessed yesterday. The apartment we were going to rent in Jacksonville fell through because the landlord received an anonymous tip about our background. Someone is hunting us. Jacksonville. So they had settled on a destination after their original plans fell apart. Maybe you should turn yourself in. Turn myself in for what? Borrowing money from my own family? Taking out loans using our information without consent? Identity theft? Fraud? I kept my voice steady. Not to mention whatever you and Persephone did to her clients. The silence on Thaddeus's end stretched for nearly 10 seconds. How do you know about that? His voice had dropped to a whisper. The same way someone else knows about it. The same way the police know about it. The same way Persephone's former employer knows about it. I heard footsteps on the stairs and knew Orion was coming up. Thaddeus, you didn't just betray your family. You helped that woman steal from innocent people. I didn't. Thaddeus struggled with words. Look, Persephone had some problems at her old job, but that was different. What we did with your money was just family business. Family business. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You abandoned your son and stole his future to run away with a criminal. She's not a criminal. She made some mistakes, but she's trying to start over. We both are. The clicking from downstairs stopped suddenly. A moment later, I heard Orion's bedroom door open and his quiet footsteps on the stairs. Thaddeus, I think you need to face reality. Your girlfriend is going to prison for embezzlement. You are probably going to prison for fraud. And Orion and I are going to rebuild our lives without you. Prison. Thaddeus's voice jumped an octave. Mom, nobody's going to prison. This is all just a misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion. Orion appeared in the bedroom doorway, moving silently to stand beside me. He held up his laptop screen, showing me what looked like a news article. The headline read, Local financial advisor arrested in embezzlement scheme. My breath caught. Thaddeus, you should probably turn on the news. Why? Your girlfriend was arrested this morning. The sound that came through the phone was somewhere between a sob and a scream. That's impossible. She was just here an hour ago. We were planning our next move. Where is here? I asked, as Orion quickly typed on his laptop. The Sunset Motel on Route 9, Room 12. Thaddeus's voice was becoming increasingly frantic. Mom, if they arrested Persephone, they're going to come for me next. I need help. I need money to get out of town. Orion walked to the dresser and picked up a notepad. He wrote something quickly and showed it to me. Keep him talking. Police are 5 minutes away. My heart nearly stopped. Orion had called the police. He'd known exactly where his father was hiding and had been waiting for this moment. Thaddeus, running isn't going to solve anything. Running is the only thing that's going to keep me out of prison. Thaddeus's breathing was becoming labored. Mom, please, I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm your son. You raised me. Doesn't that count for something? It counted for something when you were the son I raised. The person on this phone is a stranger who stole from his own child and left us with $12. $12. Thaddeus's voice cracked. Mom, there should be more than that. I didn't take everything. You took everything, Thaddeus. Our savings, Orion's college fund, even Octavia's memorial account. Everything. I can pay it back. Once this investigation blows over, I can get another job, make payments, fix everything. How are you going to pay back the money you helped steal from 17 elderly people? Another silence. 17. How do you know the exact number? Orion held up another note. Don't answer that. I know because the evidence is public now. Police, lawyers, victims, families. Everyone knows what you and Persephone did. Someone's been feeding you information. Thaddeus's voice turned suspicious. Mom, who have you been talking to? Did you hire a private investigator? I don't need to hire anyone. Thaddeus, you and Persephone were sloppy. You left digital fingerprints everywhere. Digital fingerprints. He paused. Mom, you barely know how to use email. How would you know about digital fingerprints? Orion moved to the window and peered through the curtains. He held up 3 fingers, then two, then one. Maybe I'm not as helpless as you thought. Mom, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Whoever's been helping you, whoever's been giving you this information, they're dangerous. They've destroyed my life. They've destroyed Persephone's life. And they won't stop until... The line went quiet except for muffled voices in the background. Thaddeus, hello. Mom? His voice was different now. Defeated. I have to go. The police are here. Through the phone, I could hear official voices, the sound of handcuffs clicking, someone reading rights. Thaddeus Blackwood, you're under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit embezzlement. The line went dead. Orion closed his laptop and sat down beside me on the bed. Is it over? I asked, my voice barely audible. The arrests are over. The recovery process is just beginning. Orion's voice carried the same calm certainty I'd grown to recognize. But yes, Grandma, the part where we were victims is over. Now we get to be survivors. I looked at my grandson. This child who'd systematically dismantled two adult criminals with nothing but intelligence and determination, and finally understood what had really happened here. Thaddeus thought some mysterious enemy had targeted him. He'd spent days looking over his shoulder, paranoid about who was hunting him down. He never suspected that his own son had been watching him all along. The boy he'd abandoned without a second thought had become the architect of his downfall. Orion hadn't just protected us. He'd delivered justice to every family Thaddeus and his girlfriend had betrayed, and he'd done it all while keeping up with his homework and taking chemistry tests. My grandson had given Thaddeus exactly what he deserved: consequences. Real family doesn't abandon each other when things get difficult. Real family doesn't steal futures to fund selfish dreams. But real family also doesn't let anyone hurt the people they love, not even when that someone shares their last name. The week after Thaddeus's arrest passed in a blur of police interviews, financial paperwork, and hushed phone conversations. Detective Rhodes kept us updated on the case, explaining that both Thaddeus and Persephone were being held without bail due to flight risk concerns. The evidence against them is substantial, Rhodes told me during one of our calls. Ms. Velez's previous record isn't helping their case. We've identified 15 of the 17 victims. Your information pointed us toward... He paused, and I could hear his unspoken question. How did we know so much about their scheme? Who had compiled the meticulous documentation that led to their arrests? That's good news, I said, deliberately avoiding the implied question. Those people deserve to get their money back. We're working on asset recovery, but I should warn you, a lot of the money is gone. Spent on luxury items, travel, gambling. Rhodes's voice softened. I'm sorry, Mrs. Blackwood. Your son appears to have had a serious gambling problem that may have precipitated much of this. After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the wall calendar where our family birthdays were marked in different colors. Thaddeus's was coming up in November. I wondered if he would spend it in a jail cell. Orion had been unusually quiet since his father's arrest. He still maintained his spreadsheets and monitored the investigation's progress, but the fierce energy that had driven him seemed diminished. I often found him staring at old family photos or sitting in Thaddeus's empty room. That evening, I knocked gently on his bedroom door. Orion, can I come in? He was sitting cross-legged on his bed, surrounded by papers and his ever-present laptop. Sure, Grandma. I sat beside him, noticing the dark circles under his eyes. You haven't been sleeping. I'm fine. He closed a folder labeled Dad's Timeline and set it aside. Just organizing evidence for the prosecutor's office. Detective Rhodes said they might need additional documentation. Orion, I placed my hand over his, stilling his restless organizing. It's okay to feel conflicted about what's happened. He looked up, his expression guarded. I'm not conflicted. Dad committed crimes. He's facing consequences. That's justice. He's also your father, the only parent you've known. Orion's carefully maintained composure cracked. His shoulders slumped, and he looked suddenly younger, vulnerable in a way he hadn't allowed himself to be since Thaddeus left. I keep thinking about when I was little. he said softly. How he used to carry me on his shoulders at the park. How he taught me to ride a bike. He picked up a photo from beside his laptop, Thaddeus teaching 5-year-old Orion to fish. Was it all fake? Did he ever really love me? Oh, Orion. I pulled him into a hug, feeling his thin shoulders shake with suppressed emotion. Your father loves you. I believe that. But love isn't enough sometimes. People can love their families and still make terrible choices that hurt them. If he loved me, how could he steal my future? Orion's voice was muffled against my shoulder. How could he just walk away? I had no good answer. How do you explain to a child that the parent who should protect them had instead betrayed them in the most fundamental way? I think your father lost himself after your mother died. I said carefully. The gambling, the relationship with Persephone, they were all symptoms of something broken inside him. It doesn't excuse what he did, but maybe it helps explain it. Orion pulled back, wiping his eyes quickly as if embarrassed by his emotion. Detective Rhodes said Dad had gambling debts, that he might have started helping Persephone to pay them off. That makes sense. I recalled Thaddeus's late nights, his unexplained absences, the cash withdrawals that had seemed odd but not alarming at the time. I've been searching online records, Orion admitted. Dad visited a lot of online gambling sites. He also had accounts at casinos in 3 states, and I found receipts for rehab programs 2 different times he tried to quit. My heart ached. Thaddeus had been spiraling for years, and I had missed it, too focused on raising Orion, too willing to accept Thaddeus's increasing distance as lingering grief for Octavia. He kept it from both of us, I said, trying to ease Orion's burden. He didn't want us to know. I should have noticed sooner. I could have stopped him before it got so bad. Orion, listen to me. I took his face in my hands, forcing him to meet my eyes. You are 13 years old. It was not your responsibility to save your father from himself. It was his job to take care of you, not the other way around. Orion nodded, but I could see the guilt lingering in his eyes. For all his remarkable abilities, he was still a child trying to make sense of a parent's betrayal. I don't hate him, he said finally. I just wanted him to be better than this. I know, sweetheart. I wanted that too. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Thaddeus's choices hanging between us. Then Orion straightened, visibly gathering himself. The prosecutor wants me to testify, he said, his voice steadier, about the financial records, the transactions, everything I documented. My alarm must have shown on my face because he quickly added, they're not going to reveal how I got the information. Phoenix has been helping me prepare a statement that protects me legally. I'll just be a witness who observes suspicious activity. Are you sure you want to do this? You could stay out of the courtroom entirely. Orion shook his head firmly. I need to do this, Grandma. Not just for us, but for all the people they hurt. Someone needs to speak for them. Looking at his determined face, I saw echoes of both his parents' Thaddeus's intensity and Octavia's unwavering moral compass. Whatever mistakes Thaddeus had made, he had helped create this remarkable child who now sat before me, choosing justice over comfort. Okay, I said, squeezing his hand. We'll face this together. That night, I heard Orion crying softly in his room. I didn't go to him, understanding that he needed this private moment to grieve for the father he had lost, not to arrest, but to the choices that had led them both to this point. The morning of our meeting with the district attorney dawned cold and gray, a typical November day in Springfield. Orion dressed with unusual care, a button-down shirt, khaki pants, his best shoes. He looked older, more serious, like someone preparing for an important job interview rather than a 13-year-old heading to a prosecutor's office. How do I look? He asked, adjusting his collar nervously. Very professional, I assured him, straightening his shirt. Are you sure you are ready for this? He nodded, though I could see anxiety in the tight line of his shoulders. Phoenix will be there, and Detective Rhodes. I've practiced what to say. The district attorney's office occupied the 3rd floor of the county courthouse, an imposing stone building in the center of town. Detective Rhodes met us in the lobby, his expression both sympathetic and curious as he shook Orion's hand. Mr. Blackwood, I appreciate your willingness to help with this case. Orion straightened under the formal address. I want to make sure the victims get justice. Rhodes nodded, studying my grandson with renewed interest. That's admirable, especially given your personal connection to the case. Phoenix Whitaker waited for us outside the conference room, his tall frame bent in conversation with a sharp-featured woman in a gray suit. He straightened when he saw us, offering a reassuring smile. Mrs. Blackwood, Orion, this is Assistant District Attorney Marlene Winters. She's handling the case against your son, and Miss Valez. Ada Winters extended her hand first to me, then to Orion. Thank you both for coming in. I understand this is a difficult situation for your family. Her assessment of Orion was quick but thorough, and I could see her mentally adjusting her approach. This was no ordinary child witness. Inside the conference room, Winters laid out the case against Thaddeus and Persephone in clinical terms. 17 counts of fraud, embezzlement of nearly $400,000 from elderly clients, identity theft, and conspiracy charges. Based on the evidence we've received, she said, glancing at Orion, both defendants are facing significant prison time. Mr. Blackwood's charges are somewhat less severe than Ms. Velez's due to her prior record and position of financial trust. But we're still looking at 5 to 10 years. Orion sat very still, absorbing this information. What about restitution? Will the victims get their money back? Winters smiled slightly, clearly impressed by the question. We're pursuing asset forfeiture. Ms. Velez had significant holdings property, vehicles, jewelry that can be liquidated. Your father's assets are more limited, but we've frozen everything we could locate. And our money, I asked. Orion's college fund. That's more complicated. Winters shuffled through her notes. Since your son had legal access to some of your accounts as a joint holder, those transfers might be considered civil rather than criminal matters. However, the fraudulent loans taken in your names are clearly criminal, and we'll be seeking full discharge of those debts. The discussion continued for nearly an hour, with Orion asking remarkably insightful questions about the legal process. Finally, Winters turned to the purpose of our meeting. Orion, Detective Rhodes tells me you were instrumental in documenting the financial transactions that revealed this scheme. I'd like you to walk me through how you discovered what was happening. Orion glanced at Phoenix, who gave a subtle nod. They had clearly prepared for this. I noticed my father acting strangely several months ago. Unusual phone calls, secretive behavior with his computer. Orion's voice was steady, rehearsed. When he left suddenly, I checked our family accounts and discovered they had been systematically emptied. I began documenting the transfers, which led me to discover Ms. Velez's involvement. And how did you connect this to the larger fraud scheme involving her clients? Winters asked, watching him closely. Public records. Orion maintained eye contact, showing no signs of deception. Miss Velez had a previous case in Toledo that was settled out of court. Once I had her name, I researched her background and found patterns that suggested similar activities at Meridian Financial. That's quite impressive investigative work for anyone, let alone someone your age. Winters leaned forward. Orion, I need to ask this directly. Did you access any computer systems or accounts without authorization to gather this evidence? The room fell silent. This was the question we had been dreading. Phoenix shifted slightly. Ms. Winters, I've reviewed Orion's methods. He had legitimate access to family accounts as a beneficiary. Any other information he gathered came from public records or was provided anonymously by concerned parties. Winters didn't look entirely convinced, but she nodded. I understand. And I want to be clear. Our office is focused on prosecuting the actual perpetrators of this fraud. We have no interest in pursuing technical violations that might have occurred during the discovery of these crimes. The tension in Orion's shoulders eased slightly. I just wanted to protect my grandmother and help the other victims. And you did. Winters smiled, a genuine expression that softened her professional demeanor. Your documentation is some of the most thorough I've seen in a financial crimes case. Frankly, it's better organized than what some of our forensic accountants produce. As the meeting concluded, Detective Rhodes pulled me aside while Orion spoke with Phoenix. Mrs. Blackwood, off the record, your grandson is extraordinary. I've been in financial crimes for 15 years, and I've never seen someone his age comprehend these systems so thoroughly. He's always been gifted with computers, I said carefully. Rhodes lowered his voice. The level of access he gained, it goes beyond gifted in any other circumstance. We might be having a very different conversation about his methods. My heart raced. Detective, don't worry. He held up a hand. As A.D. Winters said, we're focused on the real criminals here, but you might want to guide that remarkable talent of his toward more conventional paths. Maybe a summer internship with our cybersecurity division when he's a bit older. As we left the courthouse, Orion seemed lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. They're not going to ask about how I got the evidence, he said quietly. Phoenix was right, they care more about prosecuting Dad and Persephone than how they were caught. Detective Rhodes was impressed with you. I told him. He even suggested you might have a future in cybersecurity. Orion smiled a real smile, the first I'd seen in weeks. I'd like that, using these skills to help people instead of just this, one crisis at a time, I reminded him. For now, let's focus on rebuilding our lives. As we walked to the car, Orion's phone buzzed with a message. He checked it, his expression shifting to surprise. Dad wants to see me. He's requested a meeting before the preliminary hearing. My stomach clenched. Are you ready for that? Orion stared at the message for a long moment. I think I need to hear what he has to say, even if it's just excuses. I'll go with you. He shook his head. No, Grandma, this is something I need to do alone. Looking at his resolute expression, I realized my grandson had crossed some invisible threshold. The boy who had needed protection was becoming someone who made his own choices, who faced difficult truths head on. Okay, I said, respecting his decision. But I'll be right outside if you need me. The Springfield Detention Center was a stark concrete building on the outskirts of town, surrounded by chain-link fence topped with razor wire. In the visitors' parking lot, I squeezed Orion's hand one last time before he followed the guard inside. Remember, you don't owe him anything, I said. Not explanations, not forgiveness, not even staying if you feel uncomfortable. Orion nodded, his face composed but pale. I know. I just need answers. I watched him disappear through the heavy metal doors, this child who had been forced to grow up too quickly. Then I sat in the car, hands gripping the steering wheel, waiting for my grandson to confront the father who had betrayed him. Inside, according to what Orion later told me, a guard led him to a visiting room divided by a thick glass partition with phones on either side. Thaddeus was already seated when Orion entered, wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He looked older, diminished somehow, dark circles under his eyes and several days' stubble on his chin. When he saw Orion, his face crumpled with emotion. He reached for the phone with trembling hands. Orion, I didn't think you'd come. Orion sat across from his father, studying him with the analytical gaze that had become so familiar. I almost didn't. Thank you for being here. Thaddeus's voice caught. I've been trying to call the house, but no one answers. Grandma changed our number. Thaddeus nodded, accepting this. How are you? Are you okay? Is Mom taking care of you? We're managing. Orion's voice was cool, controlled. No thanks to you. The words hit Thaddeus like a physical blow. I deserve that. I deserve all of it. But Orion, I need you to understand something. I never meant to hurt you. You stole my college fund. You abandoned me. You committed crimes that are sending you to prison. Orion's voice remained steady. What exactly did you think would happen? I thought I could fix everything before it got to this point. Thaddeus leaned forward, his face earnest. Persephone had this investment opportunity. It was guaranteed to triple our money in 6 months. We were going to put everything back with interest. There was no investment opportunity. Dad, it was a con, just like everything else Persephone did. Thaddeus fell silent, his delusion confronted by his son's clear-eyed assessment. Why did you do it? Orion asked, the question that had haunted him for months. Why risk everything? Why hurt us? Thaddeus stared down at his hands. It started with the gambling. After your mom died, I couldn't feel anything except when I was playing. The risk, the possibility of winning it was the only thing that made me feel alive. Mom's been dead for 13 years. I know. And for a long time, I had it under control. Just weekend trips to the casino, online poker at night after you were asleep. Thaddeus's voice grew hollow. But then I started losing. Big losses. I took out loans to cover them. Then more loans to cover those. And Persephone, she approached me at a casino in Riverside last year, said she'd seen me around, knew I was in trouble, offered to help restructure my debt. Thaddeus laughed bitterly. I thought she was an angel. Turns out she was just looking for someone with tech skills to help her run her scams. So you helped her steal from elderly people. Orion's disgust was palpable. I told myself they were just short-term loans, that the investment would pay off and everyone would get their money back. Thaddeus's eyes filled with tears. I know how it sounds. I know it was wrong, but I was desperate. Orion, the loan sharks were threatening me. I owed them over $200,000. And that made it okay to steal from your own family. No, nothing makes that okay. Thaddeus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I've had a lot of time to think in here about what I've done, about who I've become. And I hate myself for it, for hurting you, for letting your mother down. Thaddeus pressed his palm against the glass. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just want you to know that the man who did those things, that's not who I wanted to be for you. Orion stared at his father's hand on the glass but didn't raise his own to meet it. The police said you had tried rehab. For the gambling, Thaddeus nodded. Twice, I'd stay clean for a few months. Then something would trigger me a bill I couldn't pay. A bad day at work, and I'd be right back where I started. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you ask for help? Pride, shame. Thaddeus's mouth twisted. I was supposed to be taking care of you, not the other way around. And Mom had already done so much. Raising you while I checked out emotionally, I couldn't burden her with my failures too. Orion sat silently, processing this information. I could imagine his mind working, fitting these new pieces into the puzzle of his father's betrayal. There's something else you should know, Thaddeus said finally. Something I haven't told anyone, not even my lawyer. Orion raised an eyebrow, waiting. I've kept records of everything Persephone did. All the accounts she accessed, all the money she stole, all the fake investments she created. Thaddeus leaned closer to the glass. It's on an encrypted drive hidden in our house, in the loose floorboard under my bed. Why are you telling me this? Because I want to make things right. Those people deserve to get their money back. Thaddeus's voice dropped to a whisper. And because I'm pleading guilty, Orion, I'm not fighting the charges. I'm going to prison for what I did. Orion's carefully maintained composure faltered. For how long? My lawyer says with a guilty plea and cooperation, maybe 5 years, 3 with good behavior. Thaddeus attempted a smile that didn't reach his eyes. It's better than I deserve. What about Persephone? She's fighting everything, blaming me, saying I manipulated her. Thaddeus shook his head. But with my testimony and those records, she's looking at 15 to 20 years. The guard approached, signaling that their time was almost up. Orion, I need to ask you something. Thaddeus pressed his hand against the glass again. The evidence that led to our arrests, the detailed financial records, the email conversations, the client information. Where did it come from? Orion met his father's gaze steadily. Maybe you weren't as careful as you thought. Understanding dawned in Thaddeus's eyes. It was you. You've been tracking me all along. Orion neither confirmed nor denied. but his silence was answer enough. My God. Thaddeus stared at his son with new eyes. Those digital fingerprints your grandmother mentioned, the anonymous packages to the victims, the perfectly documented evidence trail. It was all you. Time's up, the guard announced. Orion stood, gathering his jacket. Goodbye, Dad. Orion, wait. Thaddeus pressed against the glass. I'm sorry, Pichmai, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I need you to hear it. For a moment, Orion hesitated. Then, slowly, he raised his hand and placed it against the glass, mirroring his father's. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was acknowledgement, connection, the barest possibility of something healing in the future. I know, Dad, he said quietly. Then he turned and walked away, leaving Thaddeus staring after him, his hand still pressed against the cold glass. When Orion returned to the car, his face was composed but his eyes were red-rimmed. I didn't press him for details, just squeezed his hand as he buckled his seatbelt. Okay, I asked simply. He nodded. He's pleading guilty, cooperating against Persephone. After a moment, he added, he said there's an encrypted drive under the floorboard in his room, with evidence. Do you believe him? I think so. Orion stared out the window as we drove away from the detention center. He's not the person I thought he was, but maybe he's not entirely the person I've been afraid he was either. That evening, we found the drive exactly where Thaddeus had said it would be. Orion spent hours decrypting it, revealing a detailed record of Persephone's crimes dating back years far more extensive than even he had uncovered. The next morning, Detective Rhodes arrived to collect the drive, his expression serious as Orion explained its contents. Your father provided this, he asked, clearly surprised. He wants to make amends. Orion said simply. Rhodes nodded, studying my grandson with new respect. He's lucky to have a son like you. Orion. Not many people would show such maturity in these circumstances. After the detective left, Orion sat at the kitchen table, unusually quiet. Do you think people can change? Grandma really change? I thought of Thaddeus, the bright, loving boy I had raised, the grief-stricken young father, the man who had fallen so far and hurt so many. I believe they can, I said carefully, but it takes more than words. It takes consistent action over time. If Dad really changes, if he serves his time and tries to make things right, do you think we could ever be a family again? The question broke my heart with its hope and vulnerability. I don't know, sweetheart, but I do know that forgiveness isn't a single moment. It's a process, and it doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. Orion nodded, absorbing this. I'm not ready to forgive him yet, but I think someday I might be. That's enough for now, I assured him. One day at a time. 6 months after Thaddeus's arrest, I was reading a novel at my kitchen table when Orion burst through the front door with more energy than I'd seen from him since before his father left. Grandma, check this out. He dropped his backpack and pulled out an official-looking envelope. It's from the district attorney's office. I set down my book and took the letter. The state seal at the top made my heart race. Restitution payment, I read aloud, in the amount of $18,400. That's from Persephone's assets, Orion explained, practically bouncing on his feet. They sold her car, her jewelry, liquidated some investments she made with stolen money. We're getting back almost half of what Dad took from us. $18,400. Not everything, but enough to breathe again. Enough to start rebuilding Orion's college fund. What about the other families, I asked, still scanning the letter. Mrs. Miller got back $22,000. Mr. Hayes got his full amount because they caught Persephone before she could move all of his money. Orion sat down across from me, his eyes bright with satisfaction. 17 families are getting something back. Not everything, but something. I folded the letter carefully, still hardly believing it was real. And your father, Orion's expression grew more serious. 5 years in federal prison. He pled guilty to avoid a longer sentence. He paused. His lawyer says he might get out in 4 with good behavior. 4 years. Part of me felt relief that it wasn't longer. Part of me wondered if it was long enough. How do you feel about that? Orion considered the question with his usual thoughtfulness. I feel like justice happened. Not revenge, just consequences. He pulled his laptop from his backpack. But Grandma, I want to show you something else. The screen displayed what looked like a professional website. The header read, Sanctuary Shield Services, protecting families from financial fraud. Orion, what is this? Remember how I said I wanted to help other families? Well, I've been working on this for months. He clicked through different pages showing services, testimonials, educational resources. I've helped 12 families recover stolen money so far, and I've taught dozens of people how to protect themselves from financial fraud. The website was sophisticated, clearly designed, completely professional. At the bottom, I saw the founder's name on Blackwood, Certified Financial Crime Prevention Specialist. Certified by who? I took an online course through the National Association of Financial Crime Investigators. Passed their certification exam last month. Orion grinned. I'm probably the youngest certified financial crime specialist in the country. I stared at my grandson, this remarkable young man who turned our worst experience into a mission to help others. Are you making money from this? Some enough to help with household expenses and start rebuilding my college fund? He pulled up another page showing client testimonials. But honestly, Grandma, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I know what it feels like when someone you trust betrays you, and I know what it feels like to fight back and win. A soft chime came from his laptop. Orion glanced at the notification, and his expression grew focused. I need to take this call. It's a family in Oregon whose teenage son has been stealing his grandmother's Social Security checks. He stood up, already shifting into his professional mode. Orion, wait. I caught his hand. Are you happy? Really happy? He paused, looking at me with those serious brown eyes that reminded me so much of Octavia. I'm proud, Grandma, of what we survived, of what I can do to help people, of how strong we've become. He squeezed my hand. Dad thought abandoning us would break us. Instead, it taught us what we're really made of. After he went upstairs to take his call, I sat in my quiet kitchen, thinking about how much had changed. We'd moved to a smaller house across town, but it felt more like home than the Victorian ever had. I'd gone back to substitute teaching a few days a week, not because we needed the money as desperately as before, but because I missed working with students. Orion had grown 3 inches and developed the quiet confidence of someone who'd faced down real danger and emerged victorious. He still got straight A's, still helped with dinner, still kissed my cheek goodnight, but he also ran a business that protected families from financial predators. He spoke at community centers about digital security. He consulted with law enforcement agencies about cybercrime prevention. My 13-year-old grandson had become someone I looked up to. The phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID and froze. Springfield Correctional Facility. Thaddeus. I stared at the ringing phone, remembering the last time we'd spoken, the desperation in his voice, the sound of handcuffs clicking, the moment his old life ended and his new reality began. The phone kept ringing. After 6 rings, it went to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Springfield Correctional Facility. I picked up the phone and then, without answering, I turned it off. Some bridges, once burned, don't get rebuilt. Some forgiveness has to be earned, not demanded. And some consequences last exactly as long as they should. Upstairs, I could hear Orion talking to his Oregon clients, his young voice steady and reassuring as he explained how to document financial abuse and protect vulnerable family members. My grandson had learned that when someone hurts your family, you don't just survive. You make sure they can't hurt anyone else's family either. I smiled and went back to my book, listening to the sound of justice being served one phone call at a time. The next morning, as we prepared breakfast together, Orion mentioned casually, "Dad called you yesterday." I glanced up. surprised. How did you know? I set up call monitoring on our home phone. Security precaution. He cracked eggs into a bowl, not meeting my eyes. You didn't answer. No, I didn't. Orion whisked the eggs with careful concentration. I've been exchanging letters with him. Not often, just sometimes. This was news to men. He's taking classes in prison, computer courses, but also therapy, gambling addiction treatment. Orion poured the eggs into the heated pan. He's trying, Grandma. That's good, I said carefully. People can change if they're willing to put in the work. He asked about you in every letter. If you're okay, if you're still angry. Orion glanced at me. I told him you needed time. I do. I busied myself with making toast. What we went through, what you went through, it doesn't just heal overnight. I know. Orion divided the scrambled eggs onto our plates. But maybe someday you could read one of his letters or write to him, not for his sake, but for yours. I looked at my grandson, this child who had become wise beyond his years. Maybe someday, but not yet. Orion nodded, accepting this. That's fair. In the meantime, we have work to do. He pulled out his phone, checking his schedule. I'm speaking at the senior center today about recognizing financial scams. Want to come? You could share your perspective as someone who's been through it. The invitation touched me deeply. After months of feeling helpless, of watching Orion fight battles I couldn't understand, he was offering me a chance to join him in his mission. I'd like that, I said, smiling at the young man across the table, no longer just my grandson, but my partner in rebuilding our lives. As we ate breakfast together, planning our presentation, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us here. A betrayal that should have destroyed us had instead revealed our strength. A crime that should have left us bitter had become a catalyst for helping others. And a 13-year-old boy who should have been broken by his father's abandonment had instead become a protector, not just of his grandmother, but of vulnerable people everywhere. Maybe someday I would be ready to speak to Thaddeus again. Maybe someday Orion would have the father he deserved. But for now, we had each other, and we had purpose, and that was enough. Ready for your first public speaking engagement? Grandma, Orion asked, eyes twinkling with excitement. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, gathering our dishes. Let's go help some people. And together we stepped into the future we had reclaimed, one keystroke at a time. So that's my story. I'd love to hear what you think. Was I wrong to let Orion handle everything instead of going to the police myself from the beginning? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more stories like mine. Also, tell me where you're watching from and what you would do if you were in my place. Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. Thank you for watching.